Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
For today's adventure, we're joined by Alex Hodges. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Nederlander Concerts. With over 40 years in the industry, Alex has done it all. Concert promoter, talent agent, personal manager, corporate executive. He's worked with legends, everybody from Otis Redding to the Allman Brothers Band, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he's played a key role in reshaping the industry. From his days at House of Blues concerts to his work expanding Nederlander's footprint. He's a Georgia Music Hall of Fame inductee, and he's left an undeniable mark on live entertainment. Can't wait to dive into his incredible journey. Let's welcome Alex Hodges. Alex, thanks for making the time for us today.
Well, you're welcome. I look forward to it. I think I'm just looking at your logo, Adventures in Venueland, and that's kind of what we all do. Last night I was down at the Grove in Anaheim, and we work a great deal of shows. We work in Vina Robles Amphitheater. Been there. Nederlander Concerts has been there 10 years. We do try to dominate the calendar along with our friends at Live Nation at the Greek Theater, and then of course we activated a once dormant venue in San Jose, the San Jose Civic. And we've got Dream Theater there this week. So, a sold out show. I was with Grove last night, Amy Grant, sold out show. And I think the mention of these two is just a sampling of the variety and the divergence of music that we will all see, all of your listeners will see over the course of this year. There's a lot of great music of every type out there. And when you mention my history, I guess it's been more than the number of years you stated in that bio.
Yeah, I didn't want to put the actual number out there.
But I will tell you, when I was in college, my fraternity brother wanted to book shows, and the university was in Macon, Georgia, Mercer University, and we talked between classes in the hallway, and then I started. He said, "I'm going to quit selling clothes at my cousin's store, and I want you to come down." And I could type. He thought I could type the letters because he could write them and type them, and we would send to all the colleges, the names of bands that either we created or they really existed as the name of a band. But we had artists that could do anybody. They could do anybody and do it, better than the original almost. So it was fun. And in college, and then this was just before Otis Redding recorded and had his first hit with Stax Records of These Arms of Mine. So I've got a brochure on my wall that I think was one piece of paper, but it folded like a brochure of 4 pages. And I think it would date back to about 1961.
Wow, that's great.
But when you're in college, who knows? And I figured I would do something normal, like be a lawyer, and one of those kind of jobs, interview at the bank and stuff. Lo and behold, Otis Redding started having hits. And then I went into service, and I came back, and he was superstar, and my fraternity brother was also representing Percy Sledge, who did the original When a Man Loves a Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there have been so many great covers of Otis Redding songs and so forth. So after the service, I jumped in full tilt into booking as an agent. And we had an amazing R&B roster at the time that included Sam and Dave and Percy Sledge and Otis Redding and so many others. And unfortunately, Otis died in a plane crash in December of 1967. So, yeah, and Otis had done a Monterey Pop Festival, and a magazine came out with his picture was 1.5 pages in a major magazine, and it came out for January edition, but I got it in December. I was gonna take it with me and go with Otis on the weekend that he traveled in the unfortunate plane crash. But I didn't go. I had so many bands on the road. I had to jump on the phone on that Friday morning as he embarked on going back up to Stax to do some overdubs, and then the 3 gigs for the weekend. And of course, the one in Wisconsin didn't happen. After that, for my career, I decided maybe I'd go back into a suit and tie job in Atlanta, Georgia by the summer of '68. But my friend and I Phil Walden, we would have lunch from time to time. And a couple of years later, he brought me a yet to be released album, white label copy of the Allman Brothers Band. And he said, I've gotten the money to start Capricorn Records and studio, and a couple of artists signed, and this one's coming out, and I really believe in them. So listen to them, and tomorrow night go to see them if you like what you hear. And I remember playing it, and then laying down on the rug in my apartment and playing it again, and then playing it again, and I heard this magic tapestry of the 2 drums and the 2 guitars and the Hammond B3 organ and Greg's vocal and Dickie Betts' vocal. And I thought, you got this wide range of jazz and R&B and rock and roll, and it's just all almost a classical feel to some pieces, and almost a country feel in some parts. I thought, what an interesting tapestry. And when you heard that for the first time, you just gotta think back to not hearing it.
That type of music did not exist.
Yeah, it didn't exist. It was just completely new, fresh, different. And having an R&B background with representing so many artists in R&B, and growing up listening to eclectic music from your brothers and friends, I just like, wow. So I said, I'm in. And
sounds like he knew what he was doing too. He's like, just take this back and listen to it. Let me know what you think. If you think it's kind of cool. Like he knew he trapped you at that moment.
Well, it worked. The cast was out there, and I
exactly
followed it, hook, line, and sinker. Quit my job, went back to Macon in 1970. So. It was a great run with the old agency had a different name, Walden Artist Promotions, and then we changed it to Paragon Agency. And through the doors of Paragon Agency came a lot of artists. Some we had represented going way back, and then new artists like the Marshall Tucker Band and Charlie Daniels and Atlanta Rhythm Section, and then a lot of the ones off of Capricorn Records, really led and spirited by the success and the music of the Allman Brothers Band. And this was all in the 70s. It was a great run. Capricorn ran into some trouble later, and I decided to start over around 1980. But in that, all of that period of time in the 70s, we raised money for Jimmy Carter at different venues, at the Arena in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island. That's kind of the famous one that kicked all that fundraising off. Then we raised a lot of money at shows at the Fox Theater, the fabulous Fox Theater in Atlanta, which I think is just one of the most magical venues of all time. And of course, having grown up in Decatur, Georgia, kind of a bedroom community to Atlanta, I got to go to the Fox as a kid, and just the experience of the Fox Theater is fabulous. And then all of a sudden, booking my bands at the Fox Theater, and doing fundraisers for the governor, and then doing fundraisers for the president. Like, pretty cool stuff.
It's got to be very full circle too, to seeing shows there as a kid, and all of a sudden you're now booking the bands there. I mean, it's got to be very, you never thought you'd be there, I'm sure, as a kid.
Never had any inkling, and it's kind of a pinch myself thing. That when you're standing there and it's your show, and you're looking up at the clouds move in the Fox Theater. If you hadn't been there, you just got to go. Put it on your bucket list. So now, I mean, if you think about the different venues, the bands played everything from small clubs to the major arenas, and multiple days at Madison Square Garden. So and I always had this unique respect for the Madison Square Garden. And somebody would come up and say, my band played Madison Square Garden and we sold it out. And I would say, what was the configuration? Well, we played 180. I say, well, I didn't probably kept it to myself.
Right. It's not in the round. I don't know. Yeah.
But I'm thinking, you sell out Madison Square Garden, it should be 360 degrees all the way around, and 20,000 paid tickets sold. And I'll tell you a story about that involves Stevie Ray Vaughan in a few minutes. But it's been quite a journey, and I know, your logo says Adventures in Venueland, so a lot of it's venues, and the artists, when they start out of the garage and then they get a record deal and then they go on the road, they're going to see all of these different venues, and it's a magic combination of artist, music, fan, introducing new bands. And sometimes certain clubs are known to be the front edge of discovering new bands. And it's just been a great journey to be a part of that process, all my adult life for the most part.
You said before we started recording that there's no blueprint, and especially even from your era when you started, you kind of made your own adventure. But what was the moment when you said, "Oh, you know what? I'm done with the suit and tie life. This is it I'm going to stick with this. This is going to be my life."
I think when I made the decision in the spring of 1970. I recognized that this was probably going to be my life. I think I really enjoyed the earlier period, 2 times being in school, and there's Otis Redding, as a burgeoning star, and then coming out of the service. And in the service, my friends would send me albums from the States. I'd go to an embassy party in Istanbul, Turkey, and I'd have the coolest albums to play. So, I was serious about the music business when I got out of the Army, very serious about it. But, when you're 26 years old, can you imagine, 25 or 26 years old, can you really imagine your whole life?
Right.
And so you're kind of taking it one day at a time. And you meet people, including girls, and they go, "Oh, you represent, Otis Redding or Sam and Dave or Percy Sledge," and you get a phone number, But seriously, it was. I think the education at Mercer. I think the Army, in being a very serious program of teaching and learning and logistics and so forth, gave me some extra tools to help artists and to figure out how you take a band from Macon or from Atlanta or somewhere else and sort of expand their career. I think you at some point you realize that if the band gets to, popular at home, you've got to expand it. You got to expand it right. Where they aren't popular, where they're completely unknown. And one of the things I did early on in booking was try to get a band into New Jersey, New York, and Long Island and have them listed in the Village Voice at the same time. And then I thought, well, the kids are going to watch this and they're going to say, oh, something's going on here, because they'd see the band's name repetitively in the very popular, Village Voice, magazine or paper. And that was, and then I learned, well, to be smart, I've got to maybe subscribe to different papers. So I would subscribe to weekly papers that carried a lot about music from 8 or 10 or 12 cities, and just pour through them and look and see who's playing where. And of course, who's playing where, if I had some new bands to develop, then I'm looking for new bands I never heard of, and then see one that's already started to emerge. And that sort of produced, kind of in the back of your head, if not on paper, a roadmap for developing bands and giving them an opportunity for a greater presence and reach. And in the course of that, you learn the venues, and you also learn the mileage. How far is it from Columbus, Ohio to New York City?
Yes.
Right.
One agent will say it's just an inch on the map.
Depends on the map. It can be a centimeter.
But routing is part of the skill set an agent and managers have to learn, and when it's just too far for that next jump. And the inclination of an agent and the inclination of the manager is to add another date or two to any segment of a tour. And sometimes that's just taxing the band and the road situation too much. But so you have to be careful. And then you have to learn to book Tuesday. I mean,
right.
In a sense, anybody can book Saturday. The promoters want Saturday, but as an agent or a manager, and then on the promoter side too, you have to figure out your place in this ecosystem and the risk you got to take, or the opportunity to get the band that routed date on Tuesday. Forget Monday.
Right. Not to mention, that's the challenge for, that's a great way to put it. The Tuesday, it's still a challenge. Bands or arenas, to get someone to go out on a Tuesday night is very different than a Friday or a Saturday night. And you learn more usually from those shows that are on Tuesday night, sometimes because of that challenge.
Well, the question is the age-old question is, which is better, Sunday or Thursday? Because Friday and Saturday are great. Right. So then you have to back that into Wednesday and Tuesday, and maybe forget Monday. Yet tonight in San Jose, we have Dream Theater at the San Jose Civic, a sold-out show. So you can include Monday sometimes, but it is trickier. It is a little bit harder.
You've got, obviously, you learned so much through the years about, with Paragon and Empire of, representing artists, but you kind of took it to the next level in the 80s when you became the personal manager for Greg Allman and Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Well, you mentioned Empire, and when I started over with a smaller roster with the Allman Brothers Band, Charlie Daniels, Atlanta Rhythm Section, a couple of others in 80, I did not know Stevie Ray Vaughan. And by all of a sudden, though, several people mentioned this guitar player, and he had taken up singing with his band, and the name Stevie Ray Vaughan was shared with me as by Ray Benson of Asleep at the Wheel, and then my friend Chesley Milliken, who I'd known but hadn't seen probably in a decade. I'd known from years back, and called and said, I'm representing Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I'd heard chatter that maybe the Rolling Stones would sign Stevie to their label or something. So the name just sort of percolated. Sure. Yet he was had been on the road and had a band for quite a while. But 1983, I was invited to go see him, but I sent someone. I sent a young guy named Rick Alter. And Rick came back and said, Alex, this is like this is your cup of tea. This guy is amazing. This is you're gonna fall in love from the. And I want permission to put him on the Greg show at across the street with the Fox at Alex Cooley or the Electric Ballroom. I'm not sure Alex had it at that time. It went through different hands, but it's right across the street from the Fox. And the name I always think of is the Electric Ballroom. Anyway, famous venue, great place to see a show, great layout. And we had Greg there in early March of 1983 and put Stevie Ray Vaughan on that. And I went down early to be there when Stevie and Chesley and the band arrived. And I was sitting in an outdoor patio. March was chilly, but it was warm enough and the sun's out. You're through early March, you're through with February.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was sitting out in the patio, and they came in the front instead of the back. I heard they were going to get dropped off, and then the crew and the band and their equipment was already in the venue. And I don't know, Stevie and I hit it off from the beginning. It's like you can look at somebody and shake hands or look them in the eye, and sometimes you just know that you have a connection. Yeah. I think part of it, he appreciated the opportunity to be, in Atlanta at a cool venue and have this gig. And whatever Chesley had said, was an opportunity to get him out there. And Chesley said, we want to be with Empire Agency, but no show can be under $1,000. Now, when you think of $1,000 and Stevie coming out of clubs without a national agent and no record label, and you go, how easy and how hard is that? Well, it might sound easy to somebody in today's economy, but this is, 2025, and the price of eggs has gone way up.
Right.
So that was a bit of a challenge, but I immediately said, okay. And if there were to be a date below $1,000, I would expect not to commission it. And we went out and just went to work. And I say we because Carol Kinsel worked side by side with me at Empire Agency as we grew. We had moved from Macon to Hotlanta. And, listen, John Huey and Ian Copeland went to New York City to be joined by Buck Williams, all graduates of the class of Paragon Agency. And they had a great formed FBI, just had a great career with a lot of agents and new bands and so forth. But that was a chapter that was already passed in my world, except we remained close friends. I recommended at their age and experience and place in life at the time that they go to New York. Start your own agency, is what I told Ian. But anyway, back to Empire and Stevie Ray Vaughan. I just all of a sudden, Chesley was able to get a deal with Epic Records. And of course, Epic Records, he was signed by the legendary John Hammond, who had signed Bruce Springsteen, Sarah Vaughan, Bob Dylan, so many others, and including Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Sure.
But at this time in John's career, I think his colleagues at Epic Records felt like, oh, John just signed another one of these kind of cool but going nowhere blues artists. So the album came out, and I think they pressed 10,000 units. Not very many.
No.
Right.
It sold out in a week, mostly in Texas.
Yeah.
And they renumbered it. They gave it a new number and put it out there, and we recouped, in the first year. That was like a cool thing. But handling Stevie, he was coming out of clubs, and one of the tests would be how he would, to find an opportunity to be on a bigger stage. And a little bit bigger stage as he was opening for Greg Allman's solo band on some dates. And then we found other examples. But on the road, you got to be ready to go to the small club and then grab the opportunity to work with a larger artist. And this had happened with Leonard Skinner when I recommended him. They were making far more money than the Who paid them when they did that tour with the Who. But I thought it was a career milestone and would launch them. And Stevie Ray Vaughan had the opportunity the question came up of accepting the tour with the Moody Blues. Well, the blues purists thought this was heresy. And then others thought the Moody Blues were like getting older and it was not what Stevie needed. But I prevailed, and Chesley agreed, and Stevie agreed, and it was a great step for Stevie because the Moody Blues were at that time still an arena artist.
Sure.
They were at that level. When you think about them today and others today, careers go up and down and level out and then maybe go up and down again for various reasons, for albums that click in the second, in their second life, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I needed to know, and Stevie needed the experience, how he would, handle the big stage. And he handled it just perfectly. It was just awesome to see him on the big stage, the arenas across the country. The arenas that we did with the Moody Blues did not include Madison Square Garden. And I had this special experience from the Allman Brothers Band and reading the trades. And just, if you're a sports fan, you know Madison Square Garden's history. If
Sure.
you're a music fan, you learn Madison Square Garden's rich history. And so one day, as time went on and Stevie was getting bigger, but I said, we haven't opened to anybody at Madison Square Garden. We've done arenas in New Jersey and all around New York, but not Madison Square Garden. I said, have you ever been in Madison Square Garden before I knew you? He said, never touched foot in it. I said, okay, and you won't until you can headline 360, full house.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was one of my promises, and we accomplished that when we had the 1989 Jeff Beck tour. And that whole tour, the 1989 Jeff Beck tour was amazing for Stevie. And it was amazing for fans of both Jeff Beck and Stevie Ray Vaughan. And we alternated closing, but I made sure we got Stevie's hometown in Dallas, and we got Madison Square Garden, and we didn't close the show in L.A., but it's such a memorable moment for everybody that came to that show at the no longer existing sports arena, which was in its final days was nicknamed the Dump That Jumps, was the sports arena, and
love that.
And Bruce Springsteen played the venue quite a bit in L.A. So as you crisscross the country in all the years, the different venues just have so many moments that I've shared, and of course, fans of every age and fans of new bands and old bands have their stories about getting married or getting divorced and seeing a show at a particular venue. Greek theater, I had an agent wanted to get married at the Greek theater, and the time when we managed it, I was able to arrange that. So when you think about all the years, it's about the artist and the music and the songs. And when you drive your car, you're going to listen to some music. Some golfers want to hear music when they play, and the music plug it in on the cart. And at other times you just have a moment, like in the dentist chair, and you're going to hear music. But I just feel like I'll adopt Stevie Ray's saying that music is healing. I think it's inspirational. I think it's healing. I think it can get you going. It can be there for you in a sad moment. It can just help enlighten a great moment. And music live is just nothing like it. So that's where the fan, the venue, and the music and the artist, they all converge for just, a memorable moments. It's great to have the vinyl. It's great to have the CD. It's great to have the internet and all the avenues that you can. How about that sound of a little sound of New York here in Hollywood with ambulances. But it's the marriage of venue from club to arena, from amphitheater to performing arts center, and the music and the fan and the artist is unique. And specialists, talented people have to figure out how to take the risk as a promoter, and then as an agent to who to trust and put the band in the hands, and then what venue is right this year as you grow. Which reminds me of a story on Stevie Ray Vaughan. When I came to LA and was at ICM, of course, in 84, 85, and for a few years, Stevie was getting bigger every year. And we were trying to figure out what to do in LA. And we'd grown to the Greek Theater level and Universal Amphitheater level. And then a young booker from Bill Graham's office called me and said, so, what's going on? We want to buy some shows, because I was an agent still at that time. And I think Stan Feig said, what are you going to do with Stevie this time? I said, well, I've been thinking about that. I figure the summer out and go to back to the Greek Theater. Or you got the advantage of waiting a little bit or going early, because Universal is indoors and you've got, 365 days to choose from. But I want to treat LA as very special. And he says, well, your quest or your question, in there lies an answer. I thought, okay, I want to hear what he's got to say.
Yeah.
So he said, how about going for multiple days at the Wiltern Theater? I said,
interesting.
I like it. How many can we do? And he said, I think we can do 4. And I thought, you plaster LA with posters and the ads for Stevie Ray Vaughan to do 4 shows at the Wiltern Theater. I think that could be magic. So we dropped down in size from the Greek to the Wiltern. We did 4 nights. It was absolutely magic and a memorable equation. So I think in my sort of philosophy of this marriage of fans and venues and artists and music and the live experience, that sometimes you play the opening act, sometimes you play in the middle, sometimes you're the headliner. And at different times, you cut it back to the theaters level, and you find amphitheaters of various sizes. And if you manage it well as a manager and an agent, you can have an interesting career with your artist forever, as time goes on. And it changes after you're no longer producing new records and new songs that people are, growing in your career. But
you bring up a good point on how it is interesting, though. Sometimes it's not just about growing in size of venue constantly. Sometimes it's doing multiple nights, or it's doing, getting creative and making it interesting, and you certainly see that with artists now, and sometimes they'll kind of play a regular tour, but instead of doing an arena, they'll say, I'm going to do, like 3 or 4 shows at a smaller theater, but that's going to be a very magical experience for those attendees because it's in this more intimate setting. And of course, so many other people will have certain venues that no matter where they're at in their career, they want to play it, even if it does mean they're playing down to however many people. It's like you just have those venues that you have to play, and you could be playing arenas, and then all of a sudden you're always going to play Red Rocks, or it's those ones that you just have to have on the schedule.
True, but you see sometimes just that switching it up, playing some warehouse that's kind of industrial, maybe once, depending on the size of the band, the ability to make that kind of a legendary play that people will talk about forever. I saw them wear Santa Monica Civic has so many great memories, but it's not doing live shows now there. But all over the country, there's those special moments, and you're constantly trying to figure out what works, because you don't want to see too many empty seats. You don't want to see any empty seats. But
right.
I'll tell you a story about Ian Copeland and Miles Copeland and the Police when we were representing the Police before they had toured in the States at all, and Roxanne came out, which created some interest across the board. But the record company didn't want to support a tour and the expense of a tour and so forth. This early in their radio and record career, so to speak. And but Miles wanted to bring them into the country, and I had just hired Ian Copeland, and he, from London, England, talking somebody into moving to Macon, Georgia, from London, England.
No easy sell.
No easy sell. So Ian was playing Roxanne, and then I said, we got to bring him into the country, and Miles wanted that. So we bought, and sitting in Macon, Georgia, we bought 2 vans for them, an equipment van and just a van, no Prevost truck. We brought in 2 vans and circulated them for a lot of English groups coming in, Buzzcocks and Gang of Four and some others. And we did it early before anybody else was bringing in this type of entertainment.
And Ian Copeland, of course, is the brother of Stuart Copeland,
That's
the drummer,
exactly right,
of the Police, who is considered to be one of the most legendary drummers of all time.
Absolutely. Right? And he's a great composer for classical music as well now.
Yeah.
But just his technique of drumming, the sound was unique. This little power trio was just totally great. So we got 2 vans, and I put them in some of the clubs that we, and Ian did, that we were breaking other bands out of, more American guitar type bands. And the attitude, sometimes only 20 people would show up. And the feeling of the band was play our best set ever, no matter how few people. And all of a sudden, in one of the shows, a college guy who was also running the radio show from the campus was there, fell in love with them, and helped break them in one of the regions. But we also discovered that there were other clubs that were starting to break into a new sound. And so some of the clubs that I had used to build, say, the Marshall Tucker Band or some of the other bands, weren't, it wasn't clicking the way we had hoped. I did later, of course, as the Police exploded very rapidly, explosion to being an arena, headliner. But, I just remember so many dates where they played small venues. But Ian put together a group of clubs across the country that would play in a new sound, bands of a new sound. So we did the same thing that I had done in the R&B days of finding the right places to break artists, and then we did it in the classic, what's now known as the classic rock era, and then we did it in the with what was, I think, punk or new wave at the time.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
So as we near the end of the 80s and get into 1990, You have the untimely death of Stevie Ray Vaughan, very much mirroring kind of what happened at the beginning of your career, with Otis. And so I wondered, you're his personal manager at the time, and I wondered how that, how'd you deal with it, and how'd you bounce back?
I a famous manager told me after Stevie died, I went to work every day, of course, but I was kind of had to come out of the fog a little bit, and I was invited to do a panel, and one of the panelists was a very famous manager, and he said it was really fresh that Stevie had died. And this manager gave me some great advice, which I was already kind of following, but it was good to hear these words. Alex, just keep getting out of bed. And I think I think you find in any troubling moment, it doesn't have to be as big a catastrophe as somebody dying on the road, but there can be even the loss of a band for an agent. Get out there, go see artists playing, go sign some new bands. Get out of bed every day. Do what you do. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Just get out there and use your, God-given talents and your, the drive that maybe your brothers or your parents gave you or whatever that you picked up over the years, and just and your enthusiasm and don't mope around. Get out there and get out of bed every day and go to work.
It's so important, and in your current role at Niederlander, obviously you're drawing on this amazing wealth of experience, but what did they do better in the old days that we could still be learning from and be doing more of today?
Well, I think the day today, the touring element and the consolidation is a big question. And I don't necessarily want to take that on in this interview,
Yeah, sure.
full
Sure.
face.
That's a whole nother episode.
But it does pose a challenge for a lot of creative people who want some independence and want to think big and little at the same time and value those that diversity and kind of family or group team experience. National tours have always been around. There was Tom Hewlett and Terry Bassett doing national tours, but agents had a little bit more say-so and a little bit more power, and the local regional promoters that developed in the, I guess, late 60s, but I'll call it 70s and 80s. A lot of those in their second generation staff members, were doing such a great job in local areas. If you really go back way before that, arenas managers were buying some shows and producing them and managing them themselves. And that was not, arena managers were looking after their sports calendar. And then, a side venture would be to have a band come play,
Sure,
even a big band,
Right,
but it was never.
It was more of a secondary thing.
It was a secondary
not,
business.
Yeah.
So when the regional promoters started coming along who listened to music, and they just listened to a ton of music and they enjoyed it and became local promoters like Alex Cooley in Atlanta, Ron Delsner in New York, Larry Merrigan in Philadelphia, Don Law in Boston, Bill Graham everywhere that he wanted to go, including New York for the club, Fillmore East, and then Fillmore West, and all the stuff that he did at Winterland and so forth, and one of a kind. And then Sepp Donahauer and whoever he competed with in L.A. And you as an agent, you would see who was interested in your band the most, who really understood your band, who had the money and the wherewithal and knew how to market your band. And you've got this individual talent in the promoter side to help you develop. Now, I mentioned the clubs that help break bands. But then you step above that club level and you find these promoters in every city,
Oh yeah.
Atlanta
Yeah.
and St. Louis and Cleveland and Columbus and so forth. And that changed the world in a very positive manner, just a positive way. I might choose a promoter that Frank Barcelona Premier was choosing, but to a certain degree, it would be the same promoters. And my little agency at Paragon, and then later, we produce a lot of profit for promoters. Today, the agent almost has to wait for the touring complement before they can think about selling you a date. So that's a discomfort for us. We have a team of really good, experienced, younger guys, certainly younger than me. That's easy, but anyway, these are young, aggressive guys who like the promoting side. Most of what we've been talking about is the agency management side of the coin, but sprinkled in with the choice of venues and how that's important up and down the ladder. But it's tough today for independents.
Yeah, what would you give? I mean, it's probably hard to distill a lot of advice, but like if you do have someone who starting off today, right? This is someone who's coming out of maybe college or very early in their live event career. It's different, very different in 2025 than it certainly was, of course, when you all were paving the road back then, but just the landscape we are in now. What kind of, basic advice would you give, someone who's trying to kind of break in, become the next you, hopefully, they're probably looking at you and saying, I would love to be you at, at my point, and fast forward and do the same for the next generation. What advice could you give them?
Well, I'm complimented with the way you say that, and I'm fortunate to have never had ulcers. So if you're prone to that stress gets you down, you got to learn how to use it from a young age. Whether it's your father coaching you at whatever, or you've got to learn how to use stress as a positive. I don't know why I just said that, but I think it is an innate sense that some people do have, how to come
point,
out of
yeah.
a trouble moment and
Yeah.
keep going, and then how to grow. If you're lucky enough to get the job, somewhere,
Sure.
then you got to really dig in and think about the job and learn what it is. And that takes time. That's hours. That's sitting around your own little, kitchen table. And that's, spreading out papers on the floor, or just using your laptop and your iPad and putting together information, looking at what's going on, finding bands that nobody's heard of yet, whether you want to be the agent or whether you want to promote them or whatever. I think get the job first, and then if I said, well, somebody said, well, what job? The promoter job, or working for a manager job, or the job in the mailroom at an agency? Well, it reminds me of when I met Ian Copeland. He was interviewing. He came from London and was interviewing in LA and New York and so forth. And when I met him, I said, how the interview's going? He said, I don't know, they're going pretty good. I mean, these big agencies have their way. And so I asked him a question. I said, when will they let you sign a band? Maybe 3 or 4 years. I said, okay, let me digest that. I said, what territory will they let you book? Well, Montana, North Dakota, maybe
Right.
a little bit of Missouri.
Yeah.
I'm going, okay, here's what I offer you. And I have bands at both the club level and the arena level. And we're sitting in Macon, Georgia, and we're not having to worry about the ego of who you go to lunch with, right, or where you sit. And I've got arena bands on a national level, up and coming bands on a national level, and I want you to sign me bands that I've never heard. And I want you to start signing bands almost immediately. And as to the map of what you'll book in your first week, you will meet on the phone Ron Delsner, Don Law, Bill Graham, Irv Zuckerman, Sepp Donahue. That is what you're going to do. And I gave him an office next to mine, which he referred to in his book as being almost too close. But I think I would tell a young person to, if you have to go the mailroom route at an agency, get your foot in the door, get there and learn who does what. And then get out enough that they can't deny you the right to sign a band. Yes. Now, that's hard. Big agencies have too many clients.
Yeah.
Another way is to find a small agency like mine at the time when I hired Ian. I already had half a decade and years previously. So I had, we were pretty hot sitting in Macon, Georgia. And I always kidded that we're lucky because the rumors that aren't real never even hit our phones.
Exactly.
So we could concentrate and also accept the fact that this is like sports or politics. It's a lifetime. It's a life experience. It's a job that's 24/7, 7 days a week. Now you may have the office 5 days, but this is a commitment world.
It really is. Yeah.
And one of my favorite guys on radio and sports, he said, "What does Tom Brady and Manning have in common? They put in the time."
It's true. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, it's so true, and I feel like you mentioned the book there. I feel like we could talk to you for a book's length worth of information. I know we barely scratched the surface, and I'm sorry to say we're out of time, Alex. But I appreciate you putting in the time with us and some inspirational words there for folks getting into the industry and loved hearing the stories. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate just as a fan of music the trail that you've helped blaze through Venueland over the years.
Well, I'm complimented to be here and join you today, and hope some listeners get a little kick out of some of the conversation. Thank you very much. Look forward to doing it again.
Remember, you can find out more information about Nederlander Concerts and all the things they do at NederlanderConcerts.com. And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews so you can help others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.